Hey, what is up, you guys? It's Justin. Gonna thank you guys for making me part of your day. I gotta get good. I gotta get in a good spot right here. Okay, so what I'm gonna do. Am I too close? Is that good right there? I can't even figure out. I gotta get a good camera. Anyways, so this video, I'm gonna be talking to you guys a little bit about a few teacher things. It's actually gonna be about grade inflation. I'm gonna go freestyle off the dome with this commentary right now, this vlog. But this idea that I have. Okay, there you go. Right. This idea that I have, this thought that I have, it's very, very long and it's an intricate process. So a lot of people that don't know anything about education, they don't understand like the ecosystem, the ins and outs of education, how if you do one thing or affect another, what actually happens. So there's kind of a big problem right now in a lot of schools with grade inflation and in general the standards. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna take it back. We're gonna take it way back. Okay, so for a lot of you guys in 2001. Some of you guys were really, really young at that point, right? Some of you guys might not even have been in high school yet, right? In 2001, Congress passed the No Child Left Behind Act, right? Reform Act, okay? So it's actually, when I say NCLB, when I say NCLB, when I say NCLB for short, I'm referring to the No Child Left Behind Act. Now here's the thing. Here's what No Child Left Behind basically is, all right? So it's a big deal with Title I. For a lot of you guys, if you don't know what Title I is money that's given to disadvantaged schools. I taught at a Title I school for 10 years, so I'm very familiar with that. So what happens is that disadvantaged youth, particularly those in poverty, below the poverty line, the lunch level. So this is how they measure it, okay? When students, they go to school, right? For some of these students that we have, the only food they get that entire day is going to be their free breakfast and free lunch, okay? So that's how we measure whether or not a school is disadvantaged or in poverty or hit the poverty line. So when a student applies, right, there's got to be certain parameters, certain things they got to prove. Basically, it's if your income is less than, I don't know what the actual number is, but if your income is less, you just automatically get free lunch and free breakfast. Okay. Now, one of the things is that the amount of money you make, there's a high correlation between the amount of money your parents make and your students and their level of success. There just is, okay? So anybody wants to tell you otherwise, it's anecdotal at best, but typically, obviously, just think about it. Just think about this for a second. Would you rather have more money to raise your kid or less money, right? To be able to afford them the finer things in life, okay? So what happens is that if your school is like over half, my school was like, that I used to teach, I was like at 70%. So it's like, it was pretty poor. One of the good things I didn't tell you guys was that for teachers, especially math, science, special education, is that if you teach for 5 consecutive years, they will forgive, I think, around $23,000 in your student loans. So that's pretty good. That's actually a really good thing. But getting back on topic, so we're going to talk about NCLB, right? So it had to do with Title I, right? And so what happened was that instead of just giving Title I money to disadvantaged youth, they made a law that stated that they had to do assessment-based standards, okay? So they had to meet these standards, right? So it wasn't like we're just going to give you a bunch of money, right? And then you get whatever you want, right? It's like in order to qualify for this money, you had to have parameters set in place to where everything you had, if you didn't meet the standards, you were in danger of maybe losing that money. I don't think any school actually got it taken away, but you had to have a process and you had to have a plan in order to get the Title I funding. So it's basically accountability is what it was, okay? Now you're probably thinking like, wow, that's actually a good thing. That's the way it should be, right? But you're actually putting a lot of stress on a lot of schools that probably need that extra time. So you're putting a lot of unnecessary work. Because obviously, if you're in a rich school district, right, and you make a lot of, and the tax base, because here's the thing, most schools, their income comes up property taxes, right? And so if you're in a strong tax base right there, you automatically get a lot of money for programs and things like that, all right? So basically, the heart of the law, the spirit of NCLB is correct. Like that's the way the law should be, okay? And you should always, it's No Child Left Behind because you want it to have standards-based achievement and you want it 100% pass rate, okay? But here's the catch right here that a lot of people don't understand. The states were required to have their own standards, okay? So if you live in California, their standards might be different than the standards that are in Utah. See, there's a big deal with education because peeling out back there, right? But there's a big deal with there's states' rights and federal rights concerning education, right? And it actually branches the history of education. It has to do with what you're allowed to teach, and that's like a long time ago. Obviously, in the Bible Belt, right, is a little bit different. But that's a different video too. But basically, what it did was that it made a lot of schools have a lot of standards, but they were able to control their standards. Okay, and I'm gonna tell you a little thing about standards in general, especially with schools in general. Okay, the heart of the law is good. Nickleby in general, it's the right law. Okay, but here's the thing about laws, right? In practice, in theory, it's good. In practice, human nature will always take over, and there's a lot of bad things that can happen. Not bad things, just negative consequences, okay? That's another thing. So we'll talk about negative consequences. Well, I'm going to have to make this a two-part video. We're going to talk about negative consequences really quick, or unintended consequences. So what happens is that, I don't know the particular example, but let's say there's an island, okay? And there's an infestation of like, I don't know, rats or whatever. Yeah, we'll say rats, okay? So there's an infestation of rats. So what the government does is that they say, all right, people of this island, this remote island, in order to combat our rat problem, they're going to start paying their citizens like $5 per rat pelt. So you bring in as many rat pelts as you want, right? And they're going to pay you $5 each. That's a good idea, because it's going to be like, hey, we'll just spend a little bit of money, we'll get some money in these pockets, right? And they'll control their own rat problem, right? But here's what's actually going to happen, okay? The unintended consequence or negative consequence, because I'm going to use that term a lot. The negative consequence of that is that what would happen, and this actually happened, I don't know the exact example, my example is a little off, right? But the example was that they started breeding rats. So somebody got somebody figured it out really quick that was like, hey man, we don't need to go out and catch rats. All we got to do is just breed rats and get money, right? And that's the negative consequence of that right there, okay? That's an unintended consequence of the law or the rule, okay? Now, with standards-based achievement concerning Nickleby, it's going to lead into grade inflation, okay? And I'll tell you why. So what happens in 2001, right? States start having their standards, right? And you need a baseline. Baseline is basically like a bunch of kids take a test. We got to figure out where we want the standards at, okay? Now I'm going to use another metaphor because for a lot of people that are not in education, these metaphors are going to help explain like exactly what took place during this time, all right? Now, let's say I had 10 students, right? I'm going to run out of time. 10 students, right? And let's say that they were like anywhere from 15 to 16 years old, boys and girls, right? And let's say that to pass my class, you had to bench press one time, max out 100 pounds, right? So you had to get on there, flat bench press 100 pounds, right? So and that's quite a task for a high school kid, right? Especially a girl, okay? But let's just throw out that for a second. Let's just say there's probably going to be about 8 kids, 7 or 8 kids that can obviously do that, right? There's going to be like 2 or 3 kids that just cannot do that, right? I mean, what if a kid doesn't have an arm, right? Or missing a hand, or one of their hands doesn't work, right? You can't judge them on the same standard, right? So what would happen is that, I would imagine, let's just throw out rough numbers, that about 7 to 8 students would successfully complete this task, and 2 to 3 would have a difficult time or wouldn't be able to do it at all, okay? Now, let's say that we took that same test and we went to a different school, right? But all of a sudden, only 4 students could do that task, right? Where at another school, 8 students could do that out of 10, right? So what we do in education, what you're supposed to do, right, would be to take the other 6 and coach them up and teach them proper form on how to lift or how to push 100 pounds off their chest, right, like a bench press, right? But in education, because there's so many kids, we don't do that. See, what we do is that we lower the standards. So instead of benching 100 pounds, right, which would be normal across like the United States, right, what we do instead is that we'll lower the weight. Okay, so we'll make it so it's like, oh, you don't have to bench press 100 pounds anymore, right? All you have to bench press is 75 pounds, right? So now instead of 4 students like being able to do it, like now 8 students can do that, right? Because it's at 75 pounds. Now, you're probably thinking like, well, it's the big deal, right? That's what you would do in any point in your life, right? Well, the big deal with education and standards is that if you lower the standards for a class, okay, and it's based off of testing, that was another thing was the standardized testing, was that if you base it on standardized testing, it's a snapshot, right? It's one thing. So here's the thing, even if somebody couldn't bench press 100 pounds, it doesn't mean that they're unhealthy, okay? It just means that they can't bench press 100 pounds, right? But standards-based achievement testing was so like, that meant so much that we had to lower almost all standards, and so the score came down, okay? It's kind of like cooking your books, right? So that's what the states did, all right? Because they're not going to lose money, right? You don't want to be the school that loses money because you need that money. You can't run the school, right? So that was the negative consequence of Nickleby, right? But here was another thing that a lot of people didn't understand was that when you lower the standards like that, when you lower the weight on a bench press, you don't hurt like, you don't really hurt the kids that can't bench press it and then end up doing it. The only students you actually hurt are the people that are in the middle or advanced, right? Because what happens is that now students that could bench 100 pounds, right? They're actually being held into a lower standard now, right? And this affects the classroom arena, right? Like I taught math, right? Now this is kind of weird. Okay, we got 10 minutes, right? So I taught math. So as a junior or as a freshman in high school or whatever, right? Your path would be Algebra 1 for a freshman and then geometry, right? Now in the state that I teach in, you actually only needed 4 credits or 2 years because it's semesters, right? 2 apiece, right? You only need 2 years of math, which is really low. A lot of states require 3 now. And then I think all kids should go to 4, okay? But so what happened was that for algebra and geometry, right? Because you needed geometry to pass, there would be seniors in geometry. So 18-year-old, young men and young women in geometry, right? Now, we got to get them to, now as a high school, right, you can't mess with the pass rate. You start messing with that pass rate, that's the number everybody sees, right? So what happens is that the standards for geometry end up being lowered, right? Because it's a required class, right? It's the last class. Like if you're a senior in geometry, it's not the right track. You might have failed a class or missed a class, right? But we have to get them to graduate, so we lowered the standards. Here's the thing, that helps seniors. That helps people that can't get it done, right? But do you know who that hurts? That hurts advanced students and regular track students, okay? Because now, as a sophomore level class at geometry, it's the lowest it can possibly be. Say you needed to learn 20 things and they pulled out, so now you only need to learn 12, right? So we can test them on it. Because we need the money, right? We need all these results, all these results-based testing, right? We need these results to turn in so we can get the money. So now, because when the requirement is passed, we don't change the other classes, right? So now you have kids that are, like they're average kids, right? That are hurt by this because they're basically being told that just bench press 75 pounds. But now when you get to a college level class, right? Where it's like, all right, now you got to bench 150 pounds, right? But I've only been bench pressing 75 pounds, but if they were on normal track, they probably would have went 100, right? 125, but that track was handcuffed by Nickelby, right? Because we need to get the money. That's the point, okay? And that's where grade inflation comes in right now. And I actually have a lot of theories on why it's like this. And so because of all that standardized testing where you lowered standards, right? Now you have students, it's kind of like this. You can have a student now where they just do the minimum requirements and parents think that's an A. And it's not, okay, an A or a B. But what exemplifies A or B status is that you are masterful of the content and you're above and beyond it, right? But that's not what an A or B is anymore, any longer, right? Like when I was in school, here's the thing, I went to 12 years of, grade school, right? All the way to senior in high school, right? I went to undergraduate degree, majored in math, right? MBA, 2.5 years, okay? Working on postdoctoral work right now. So I'm gonna be in school for almost 20 years, right? I think with my level of education, I did it right. I think I did it right. Not one time have I ever been concerned about my grade enough to go talk to a professor. And that's gonna lead me into another point about what happens now, okay? So because these kids that are in the 75-pound bench press, right? They've been pushed along like, yo, you got A and B because you can actually you can do the minimum, right? Because right now the minimum is actually lower because we lowered the standards than what it used to be, right? So now these students, right, we pushed the middle. The middle is actually what happened, right? The lower moved up, the middle and everything got pushed up, and the advanced students kind of got complacent, all right? So now these students who have been kind of sitting in, regular classes that have been, standardized down, they come to a regular class, like a college level class, all of a sudden, you have 10 years of habitual students that never had to do homework, right? Because they could just get everything done. They didn't have to do homework, they didn't have to study, they didn't have to do anything like that. But now they're in a class where everything's new, right? They're in a class where everybody's just like them now, okay? And this is the class where students are advanced. These are students that are gonna go to college and they're gonna do, they're gonna actually go. They're not just gonna kind of dabble in college for a little bit and then flunk out, okay? And now we have a lot of students in that area that don't belong there. And so you made two kind of weird things with this Nickelby, because Nickelby's not there anymore. Common Core is back in, right? So now with Common Core, here's the thing about Common Core. A lot of teachers bitch about it, right? Common Core is actually the correct way to test students. Like what they're being tested on is the correct content, right? But it's just poorly executed. See, there's this thing, like, you're gonna have a good idea, right? But if it's not executed correctly, it won't work. Just like Nickleby, right? Nickleby was the right idea, but what ended up happening was that when you handcuff money to schools because of assessments, they're gonna make their own standards, right? Now, I don't have enough time to get into grade inflation, but this is an entire topic by itself. Okay, grade inflation happens when I got to that point I was making, is that I never once in my academic career ever approached a teacher or professor asking them to make my grade higher. Not one time. Now I might be the minority here, but I think in terms of schooling, I did it right. Okay, I never asked my parents to do it for me either. Okay. Now the point I'm making is that because of the Nickleby standards, like, you have a student that before Nickleby would probably be like in the 82, 83, 84 range, which is like a B minus B range, right? But because the standards have been lowered, the expectations just to get an 82, 83, 84 are all bumped up to like now 85, 86, right? And then now parents and students are like, well, I need extra credit. And it's like, if you don't do this for them, it's going to be hurtful for you in general, right? And I'll talk about that in a different video. So now you bump this grade up to like an 87, 88, right? And then now they just want you to round it up, right? So essentially you've taken what, a student that would have a B minus, right? A B, an actual B, and they're all of a sudden an A, right? And here's the thing that a lot of students don't realize, and a lot of parents don't realize this either, is that when you do that, when you force a teacher to do that, it doesn't hurt the teacher. It hurts the student. Like, they fail to see that because they only see the results. See, now everybody just wants grades, right? And that's not actually what school is about. Like, that the meta game now is that we got to get the best grades possible, but all grades are inflated now. This is exactly why colleges now don't even care about GPA anymore. Because they'll see somebody with a 3.75 GPA, but they score 1,100 on their SATs. Because what that tells a person, what that tells somebody objectively, is that they played the game correctly, but they never learned anything. Okay? And that's the difference between, and a lot of students, like, they're falling into this trap and they flunk out in college. They go to college, they don't even know how to write. They don't know how to they take all these they take all these remedial level courses, right? So you can get into college with a 3.5, but if you're taking all remedial courses that don't even count as credit, you're wasting time and money, okay? So I have a lot of thoughts on, like, whether college is for everybody, right? But that's an entirely different video too. I got like about 2 more minutes. But with grade inflation now, there's two characteristics that students and parents have with this problem, and I've always seen it, is that whenever a student comes to you and says, as a teacher or anything like that, if their first thing is my GPA is blah blah blah, like, GPA is so easily manipulated. Like, it's not even, like, I don't even count it as a valid stat anymore. I don't care what a GPA is anymore, because all classes aren't equal. Okay, you can take underwater basket weaving and get 4 A's, right? Or you can get like a B minus in, calculus, right? B minus in calculus is worth like 25 A's in underwater basket, but in terms of GPA, it doesn't matter, right? So you can be a lab assistant and get an A, and that's equal to, like, analytical physics, right? And it's not, though, but on GPA it is. So whenever somebody, like, claims their GPA, it's kind of like weight, right? Like, I don't care how much somebody weighs, but if they're talking about their weight all the time, like, I know that person's not healthy, because they're only concentrating on weight. They're not concentrating on being like a healthy lifestyle, right? And another thing too is that whenever students will come in with, like, I've always gotten A's in whatever class. Like if a student puts the grade in front of learning, like, you know what I mean? Like, if their main objective is to get the grade, it's really difficult for that. Okay, it's kind of like if you coach a basketball player, right? And he's like, well, I've always averaged 20 points, so you better give me my 20 points. I was like, I can't coach you as a player. I can't make you better as a player with that mindset, right? I mean, you can, but I'm going to run out of time. So that's going to be my part of Nickleby, and it's going to go into the part of grade inflation. Grade inflation is like a really big topic, and it's just too long for that. But if you have any thoughts, any questions about that, please leave them in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video and it's informative, you made it to the end, please share this and thumb it up and like it and retweet and all that stuff. But I'm going to hit you guys off with this next video. So thank you for watching. I appreciate all the comments and the likes already. So I've been Justin. I'll talk to you guys soon, all right? Bye.